anything that I need to be presenting up front before I have to bounce out at 2. Also want to let everyone know that you are being recorded and transcribed. We will be posting the recording to a website with resources, so you will be able to review this this recording at a later date. And we do have time built in for questions and answers periodically throughout the presentation. So if you have any questions, please just hold on to them until we get to one of those question slides. And then once we get to the question slides, we'll use the raise hand function in order to ask questions, and someone will recognize you and you can ask your question. We'll try to answer what we can here. If there's something that Henry or our other colleagues here are not able to answer right off the bat, then they will bring that question to us and we can have an internal discussion. We'll get that to you by sometime next week. Looks like the recording and the transcription are already going. Thank you for starting those, Henry. And at this point, I am going to hand it off to Henry.
Great. Thank you, Tom. So as Tom said, my name is Henry Lowry. I'm the vendor analyst. I've been here since October of last year. So, I've been learning along with this process for a handful of months now, more than a handful of months now. And I'm kind of really looking forward to having a conversation today and getting your guys' questions and feedback and kind of telling you about some exciting program updates and just going from there. So please don't be afraid to chime in when we get to our question section. Yeah, let's get started here. So pretty simple. Today, we just want to prepare you guys for this upcoming season, tell you about some of the common issues we've heard and some exciting things that we'd like to work on in the coming future. So just a few numbers, a few successes from the 2023 year, served a total of 122,000 households. I believe some are still getting wrapped up as far as paperwork goes. 40,000 crisis households, 217 ERR households, and 79% of counties served more households this year than they did the previous year. So some real growth in the program. And, these are all your guys' customers, right? These are all your clients that you're serving and helping. So we really want to celebrate that. I mean, this is a real boon for those people. So thank you. So next couple slides, I'm not going to get too deep into. You guys can always come back. We'll have these slides available for you. You can look at some of the growth and see some of the data yourself. So, but I'm not going to sit too long on it here. But so again, here's a little map for this upcoming season so you guys can really know what's happening. But now in our next section, we actually had to jam it up front because Tom has to leave. So Tom's going to go over some stuff and we're going to have for a few slides, and then we're going to have a section for questions that really just pertains to municipalities. And so we really wanted to get it up front just so it's out of the way. So I'm gonna let Tom take this over here in a second. And then, so be ready for your questions after this.
Thanks, Henry. So I know that one of the questions that I get fairly often is about kind of how some of the terms in the MOA kind of intersect with some of the rules and regulations that you guys have to follow that are set by the State Board of Accounts, and that the fact the State Board of Accounts does supersede our MOA. And so I just wanted to kind of touch on that and give some kind of on the record guidance on that. So ICDA does understand that municipal entities are under different regulation than investor-owned, privately owned, or cooperatively owned utility providers, and that State Board of Accounts regulations preclude you from recording a monetary benefit to your register prior to receipt of the actual payment. And so this is specifically in reference to the requirement in the MOA that accounts are credited at the time that you receive a transmittal. So we do note there's an inherent tension there because that seeming contradiction. In spite of that understanding, we do have a responsibility to ensure that all approved EAP applicants do receive equitable treatment, regardless of who their vendor is and what type of vendor that is. So in lieu of the requirement in the MOA that benefits are assessed to an approved applicant's account at the time of you receiving that transmittal, we are asking that municipal vendors incorporate a solution that achieves the same end result without running afoul of those State Board of Account requirements or generally accepted accounting procedures. Next slide, please, Henry. So due to the State Board of Accounts requirements that supersede our MOA, municipalities will be exempt from the requirement to assess the benefits to a customer's account upon the receipt of the transmittal. However, municipal vendors must ensure that that benefit amount is noted to the account at the time of the transmittal, even if you're not applying it at that time. Municipal vendors must also ensure that any penalties assessed to a customer account following a transmittal confirming a benefit are only assessed against the account balance that remains in excess of the benefit amount. So an example here would be, suppose one of your customers who applies with us has a $300 balance, and you receive a pledge for that customer in the amount of $200. The applicant then fails to pay their next bill. At that point, penalties may be assessed against that $100 balance that exceeds the pending benefit, but the penalties shall not be assessed against that $200 that is going to be covered by a benefit. Next slide, please. And the other thing that we're asking you to do, and this obviously we're running up against the program year starting very shortly. So, if you don't have something like this in place right now, we doubt that you'll be getting it up in place by November when transmittals start. But something for you to think about moving forward. We would really encourage municipal vendors to find a way to note on the customer's bill itself that you have received a notification of a pending benefit, and that will be reflected on the bill upon receipt of payment. We do believe that this will help with transparency for your customers, and it should result in greater peace of mind for low-income customers and reduce communication between the customer and both the municipal vendor and the LSP or IHCDA concerning the status of the benefit. We do receive a lot of phone calls, and if they're coming to us, I'm sure they're also coming to you asking, I applied, I received notification I'm getting this much benefit. Why isn't it on my bill? So if we think that if you were able to note that on the customer's bill, it might help with that. And so the best practice recommendation would also be that this note includes both the total amount of the benefit and the date on which the transmittal of the benefit was received. And at this point, I'm happy to take any questions that you might have immediately. But I know that was also just kind of like a pretty big thing there. And it's kind of consistent with guidance we've given in the past, but I think that we've kind of given that guidance in the past more on a case-by-case basis, and we haven't necessarily kind of been as transparent maybe as this. And so I know it's a lot to think about. So you're more than welcome to follow up with a question later by email if you think of something later, but I'm also happy to take questions now.
Very clear. Thank you, Tom. Crystal clear. Okay.
I'm going to go back on mute and yeah.
Okay.
I'll hand it back over to Henry.
So it looks like, here we go.
Really?
We have a question in the chat. It says, most of our EAP customers owe big balances. Do we need to get with our billing software company to implement how to do that?
Um, I mean, yeah, I don't know about the technicality of it. So that may be something that you may need to run by. You may need to run by your tech people. Um, I just, we do have a requirement, and this kind of goes back to the statute, the LIHEAP statute, which is a federal piece of legislation that all EAP applicants are to receive equitable treatment. And so essentially, equitable doesn't necessarily mean exactly the same, but we need to be sure that they do have similar protections. And since the other vendors do have that requirement that they apply the benefit to the account at the time of transmittal, we need to ensure that customers um, of municipal vendors are not receiving a kind of different structure of penalties uh, simply by virtue of who their vendor is, essentially. But yeah, I don't know about the technical side, so you may need to talk to your tech people or your software developer. And I
Now,
see a hand went up.
yep, Jonathan Lane.
Thank you. I have a question concerning when you have a customer that has a long balance and then they get assistance, they don't pay, months go by and they still haven't paid. How long is that payment good for before we have the right to do something to them?
So I mean the benefit amount is the benefit amount. So if you're talking about someone with that much of a balance, and most likely the benefit is going to be completely eaten up by what their outstanding balance is, most likely. If you have someone who receives a large benefit and they might not have such a large balance built up yet, then that benefit might last them a couple months. Basically, anything that's not applied to an outstanding charge or balance, anything that remains after that balance is resolved, would just would carry over to the next month until it's depleted. As far as taking action, I assume you mean disconnection. I think Henry's going to get into that a little bit more when it comes to when we get to the moratorium section of the training. But yeah, that would mostly just follow the moratorium. As far as outside of the moratorium, I know what IURC standards are, but I also know that the municipal utilities are not regulated by IURC. So I'll be 100% honest and transparent with you. That to me is kind of a blind spot for me that I probably need to learn more about.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great questions. Thank you. So let's go ahead. If there's no more, let's push on. So we're going to start going over our vendor guide and MOA. So the IHCDA EAP vendor guide is the best resource for you as a utility vendor. So this has all of our updated policies, procedures. It's always on our partner page. So I don't know how familiar you are with this resource, but highly recommend bookmarking this. This is where, for example, we'll post all of our trainings. It'll have all of our documentation, records, things like that. So great page to have on your side. We definitely encourage you to use that guide first before you come to us with questions, but we also don't want to, please come to us with questions. We don't want to tell you not to come to us for clarity, but great resource for you. And it's always updated and recently updated. MOA. So it is an MOA year, well, 2 years. So now we are issuing them for 2-year cycles. The latest one will take effect this year on October 1st and then run until 2025. So I have already sent these out, the first batch. And so if you have not received this, please reach out to me. So we have a new email. It is vendors@ihcda.in.gov. You should have seen this in your email already. It'll come through as a Adobe or Echo sign, something like that. If you're unclear if it's legitimate, please email me. I'll let you know whether it is legitimate or not. But yeah, these have already gone out. So again, if you have not seen one, please let me know. Okay, the ACH authorizations, just so you know, they are still going to be required annually. They will still go through Adobe Sign. It'll all be digital. Not much new there. So in this next section, we're going to go over some of these changes. Some are brief, some are a little bit longer. So some of the big changes here. Vendors are now required to suspend disconnect action for 14 days while an application is being processed. So this is outside of the moratorium. So obviously disconnects cannot occur during the moratorium season. So what we're asking is basically that once you give notice that 14 that there is going to be a disconnect, that you allow 14 days for them to apply for assistance. So next change, vendors are now required to validate, sign, and return transmittals within 7 days. Vendors are now required to use overpayment and refund summary forms when returning funds. We've updated our equal treatment clause that requires explicit participation in any investigations into violations. And then across the board, we made several updates to language in the MOA to make it more logical, concise, and clear. So as we go through the rest of this, we're going to get into some more detail on these changes. Okay, so when filling out the MOA, if you are a parent company, you only need to complete an MOA and ACH form if the deposit and W-9 information for other utility locations matches the parent company. So all locations must be listed in the attachment B, which is in the form, if they handle their own transmittals. In order to streamline the management of vendors, we're seeking to reduce the number of distinct MOAs and ACH authorizations wherever possible. So if you can group, please group. And in cases where payment goes to the same bank account, the locations should be grouped under the same parent organization for MOA purposes. So. Okay. So one of the agreements we've seen, number 5, cooperation. By signing the MOA, the vendor agrees to cooperate with IHCDA and your local service provider in regards to sharing information about applicant accounts. That includes energy consumption and cost, payments, disconnect prevention, arrearages amounts, account status, any other data related to EAP. So this information is federally mandated. So if we ask for it, we need it. Okay, getting to the little performance measures here. So collection of performance measures data is a mandated LIHEAP statute. So every year we ask several vendors to submit their performance measures data, provides energy usage, cost for all customers who receive LIHEAP benefits. Basically, the purpose of that is to demonstrate like an actual energy a reduction in energy burden, and then to assist us in crafting our own internal policy. So okay, so acceptance of payment. In accordance with state code, all payments must be made by an electronic funds transfer. In order to be paid by check, the vendor must meet these couple conditions. So obviously we want this to be electronic if possible. So if that is not possible, you need to probably let us know and why, and these are their reasons. So, and just an FYI, the claim approval and payment notifications are always going to be sent from reset@ihcda.in.gov. Okay. Unallowable expenses. So EAP funds may not be applied to deposits, commercial accounts, garbage collection, water, sewer, cable, insurance plans, repayment of fraud, setting an LP tank, and any expense not directly related to residential energy consumption or delivery. So EAP funds must provide a continuing service, and a vendor may not accept EAP funds for a closed or inactive account and apply them to an outstanding amount owed unless the account will be restored. So the overpayment and refund summary form. So Tom just put a lot of work into this form. Vendors are now required to use this form when returning funds. So it makes it easy and uniform for everybody to use and provide the required information for those refunds. They help our claim and fiscal staff in tracking and accounting for the return benefits while ensuring those funds are applied back to the correct grant. And then obviously that would help us reduce the waste of taxpayer funds. And ultimately, using these forms will speed up benefit transfer when an applicant moves and has their benefit sent to a new utility or fuel provider. So here's a look at that form. This is up on our partner page. Well, okay. So equal treatment clause, vendors shall not treat any household adversely because of EAP assistance. Adverse treatment includes charging additional rates, fees, costs, or other charges on the basis of household receiving EAP benefits. And we've also updated this clause to require explicit participation in any investigation into violations. That's pretty self-explanatory. And then agreement number 22 in record keeping, the vendor agrees to maintain an adequate accounting system to allow verification and auditing of the amount of service delivered to eligible households. This includes documentation that LIHEAP funds were not applied to unallowable costs and that refunds and overpayments were remitted to IHCDA rather than to the customer. So records must be maintained for a period of 3 years following the close of a program year. Now, I knew I just blew through a bunch of that pretty quick. We're going to get into a lot of the moratorium questions and some other stuff as well. So some of those other changes, but I want to pause here for any questions. So it looks like Lori asks in the chat, how will we know if they have applied for assistance to know we have to wait the 14 days? So a couple different questions there. So it really depends on when those 14 days are occurring, right? So no disconnect can happen during the moratorium season. So during October 1, or starting in October 1st. So, oh no, that's incorrect. I'm sorry. December 1st. So the 14 days is what we're asking is just that when that disconnect notice goes out, that there's 14 days between that time from the disconnect notice to the actual shut off, if that makes sense.
I can add a little bit more clarification there, I think.
Please.
So Lori, if I'm understanding the question correctly, it's so if someone is basically cutting close to that disconnect point and they've applied, how would you know that they have applied to be able to put that 14-day hold on? So there's kind of a couple different mechanisms there. So we are asking all of our subgrantees when they're going through applications, whenever they come across one that they see that there's a disconnect notice there, they know that person's up for an imminent disconnection, we're asking them to proactively notify the utilities so that they know that that application is there and so that they can give them the time to process the application. I will say that due to sheer volume of applicants, they might not always get that with 100% at a 100% rate. And so the other part of that is if one of your customers reports to you, if they kind of are self-reporting that they've applied, we are asking vendors to trust their applicants when they say that. And if you must, you can reach out to the appropriate LSP and just verify, like, hey, John Smith is up for disconnection. He tells me that he submitted an application. Do you see that? Do you have that application in hand? So that would kind of be, look for that notification from the LSP. But if you get the notification from the customer, trust and then verify on the back end with the subgrantee.
Right. Thank you, Tom. Okay. Great question. Thank you. Okay. So we'll get a little bit more into the moratorium here. So some of the updates, as we were just talking about. So the vendor may not, during the heating season, terminate service to the dwelling because of the failure of a customer to pay his energy or fuel bills until 14 days after it serves notice upon the customer of its intent to terminate service. So the vendor cannot disconnect a client before March 15th of any year. And then this update would give your clients time to apply for EAP. So here's some of the text itself. So this is the code. This is a law in Indiana. It's effective from December 1st through March 15th of every year. It applies to utility vendors who supply electricity or gas service, and it applies to vendors that are municipally owned, privately owned, or co-op owned. So there are a few areas where services can be terminated during moratorium. So upon request of the customer, if there's a dangerous condition or hazard upon order of the court, if there's fraud detected, and if the utility's regulating or measuring equipment has been tampered with, or if the utility has reasonable grounds to believe the customer is responsible for the tampering. So one of a good practice would be to preemptively loop us into this. So keeping us updated on these things is better than us coming back, later and asking questions. That would just be good practice. So utility vendors and LSPs will need to have good communication and foster productive partnerships in order to comply effectively with moratorium requirements. LSPs should be contacting the vendor to extend moratorium protection prior to eligibility determination. However, you are more likely to hear from the client themselves. So obviously there is going to be a delay. Clients should be given moratorium protection if they let you know that they have applied for energy assistance. So this is where we're bringing this in, where vendors should trust the client and then verify with the local LSP, with the local service provider. So LSPs have 10 business days to complete application processing for in-person appointments and 55 calendar days to complete application processing for other application methods. So you can see there's a major delay here. And so, we want to extend protection where we can. So trust, but verify. LSPs should notify the vendor when EAP eligibility has been determined so that a pledge can be entered or moratorium protection can be terminated. Vendors may contact the LSP to inquire about the status of an application that has been placed under moratorium protection while eligibility was being determined, especially if more than 10 days have elapsed since the projected determination date. So some vendors extend this protection at the beginning of the EAP season. The law does not require that. But, these are your customers and your clients. And so, we appreciate, you protecting them and getting them through a hard season. So a couple questions, that we'd like to know. Are there any tools or resources that would be helpful for moratorium? Is there anything that you've implemented in communicating or ensuring applicants are protected? Like, these are the things that we'd like to know, as we're having more and more conversations around this, please feel free to email us, reach out to us. We can always have a call and see what's working, see what's not working. And that really helps us craft policy. So, all right, moratorium questions. An LSP is the local, sorry, that's shorthand for the local service provider. That is your community action agency, whatever you want to call them. So whoever is processing the applications. Yep. And I do want to note that at the end of this MOA cycle, so when we get all these MOAs in, we're going to be sharing out contact information to everybody. So, you should know who your contacts are. They will know who you are. And we're working on that to get that sent out before the end of the season, or before the start of the season. So, question, if they don't pay water or other utilities, can we still shut off that utility, so the water, during moratorium? I think this is a perfect question for Leah if she's still on the call.
Water utilities are not regulated under the moratorium, so water can be shut off at any time, just because it's not regulated with moratorium.
Thank you, Leah.
Yeah, no problem.
So just to clarify, you cannot shut off the heating or electric just because the water is overdue.
That's correct. Thank you, Jolie. Okay. Right, let's move on. So, getting into the nitty-gritty of this transmittal process here. So these transmittals are the official record of benefit for which the client has been approved. If there's a discrepancy between the pledge received via LSP contact and the amount on the transmittal amount will be considered correct. Transmittals are not valid for payment until they have been signed by both a representative of the LSP and a representative from the vendor. Any changes made to the transmittal need to be made prior to execution, and all LSPs have been instructed to ensure that transmittals are generated and sent out at least a week on at least a weekly basis. So we're hoping to have these turned around and build some efficiency into this process. So it is the vendor's responsibility to fully review the transmittal before signing it. You should review that the client is one of your customers, that name, address, account number are correct, that they're currently active and not scheduled for disconnect at the customer's request. If there are any accounts that need to be removed, it's your responsibility to mark those changes directly onto the report and adjust the total amount if necessary before signing and then returning the transmittal report to the LSP. So vendors are required to return those within 7 days. And the vendor must apply the benefit credit to the customer's account upon approval of the transmittal, not upon receipt of actual funds. So, yeah. If an LSP discovers that an error has been made in benefit or eligibility determination, the LSP may award the client additional funds or submit a negative transmittal accompanied by an overpayment remittance. So they can award additional funds at any time, like such as crisis. Overpayment remittances must be submitted within 60 days of initial approval. If an overpayment remittance is received more than 60 days following initial approval, you may inform the LSP that the window to request overpayment remittance has lapsed. So when a vendor receives a negative transmittal, they're to follow the same transmittal procedure. After returning the signed negative transmittal to the LSP, the vendor will also sign the overpayment remittance. And the signed overpayment remittance is to be sent with a check to CDA to be reinvested in the program. In order to keep payments on time and not negatively impact customers and clients, we're asking all vendors to return signed transmittals to LSPs within 1 week of receipt. Claim notification emails will note which transmittals have been approved for payment and the total of each transmittal. And then please use those emails in conjunction with the transmittal reports for the purpose of correctly distributing funds and reconciling claims. So please remember that no LIHEAP funds are ever to be released back to customers. All unused funds are to be sent back to IHCDA within 60 days of an account closing. Okay, I know I really just breezed through that section. So do we have any questions? Okay. All right, let's get into some fun stuff here. So using the vendor portal and vendor monitoring. So for those of you that don't know, you can actually send all those transmittals online, all digital. And we call that our vendor portal. So it allows you to send, edit, sign, return, and monitor all the transmittals online. We've had a real mixed reception and usage of this program. Again, I'm not quite sure if any training was ever actually done on it or if just people have opted into it. What we've kind of found is that the people who do use it have really liked the efficiency of it. And so if you're not using this, please let me know. So it will have a separate login link, which I actually included here, and you still get email notifications. So, when it's ready, it'll let you know. And you will need to access. So you have to let me know that you want access. So email me at vendors@ihcda.in.gov. I do have a few training materials. It's pretty easy to use, I should say. If we run into any issues, I'm happy to jump on the phone with you or whatever it takes to get you on there and troubleshoot whatever's going on. But you got to let me know. And if you are already, I want to make note, if you're already in the vendor portal and you're not receiving the transmittals, your LSP has to opt you in from their side as well. And it's as simple as clicking a button. And so if you're not receiving those, please let them know, hey, I would like to receive this through the vendor portal, and all I'll do is click the button. If that doesn't work for some reason, again, please let me know. Vendor monitoring. So vendor monitoring is something I've been working to build out over the last, well, since, this year. And this is something that we're really working on expanding. It's not punitive or anything along those lines. It is required to stay in compliance, but we're using this as a way to build relations and to learn more about your processes and learn about what works, what doesn't work, and a way to spread information. So that's really what we're here for. So it is federally mandated. It is part of the LIHEAP statute, and all vendors are required to participate. And it's all done in a desktop review. So I believe we'll go into this process next. That's right. So this is kind of how it goes. So usually you receive a 30-day letter notifying you that it's beginning. You are required to submit all the requested documentation before the end of the month. You're required to complete an energy utility supplier survey for us. And then after about another 30 days, we review it, and then we send back an assessment completion report. So you'll have everything all together there at the end. So again, this is a great way for us to learn more about what works and what doesn't work. And so we really appreciate, people working on this for us. We know it's a little bit of extra work. So just some best practices to make sure that monitoring goes well. So you should have written processes to promote consistency and program integrity. In turn, those processes can then be submitted during monitoring to show your processes and programs are in compliance. So all vendors should be performing internal quality assurance audits on EAP customer accounts. All vendors should create a system to ensure that unallowable expenses are not being paid using EAP funds. And all vendors should create a 3-year record retention and destruction policy for all EAP documentation, including electronic documentation. All vendors should strive to meet all reporting deadlines, and this allows IHCDA to fulfill federal reporting requirements and make effective program changes. Okay. So, well, this isn't a question, but Lori says that she's been unable to utilize the portal, but she can log in. So Lori, I'm gonna make a note, but please send me an email at the vendor email, and we can go over what's going on. We can help troubleshoot that. So. Okay. Righty. Keep moving through. So next section, fuel funds, special programs, and additional resources. Oh, Jonathan, do you have a question for us?
Yes. Will the slideshow be provided?
Yes, so we'll send all these out. So the cards as well as the recording. So, and then on top of that, we'll have them uploaded to our partner page where they'll live.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So fuel funds and special programs. So some vendors have already established private funds or other programs to offer additional assistance. We do encourage you to look for innovative ways to offer additional benefits or programs to your struggling customers. They can be developed independently or collaboration with your local service provider or any other organization. If this is something that interests you, please let us know. We'd like to help. Maybe we can help coordinate. Maybe we have ideas. This is something that we're trying to learn more about from our partners that are already doing this. So, maybe there's an idea out there that already exists. So please let us know. So after meeting with the LSPs last month during their during their training, we got some feedback on some ideas that we think can help. So one of those that they requested was that every vendor shares their payment arrangements and a copy of their bill. So that may have like an explanation on it, on what each portion means or what numbers mean, or anything, just as a way to foster communication, give clarity. That can be really helpful for them. So this was something that they specifically requested. So if you guys could do that, I think that'd be a great step. Another big thing you could do is you can collect and send your local service provider a list of at-risk homes before the season starts. So this allows them to do more outreach and to get those customers that are struggling some help before things begin and before they get really busy. You can also do marketing through local TV, radio, paper channels. You can do that by having events or partnering with your LSP. You could even partner with us. So if that is something that you're interested in doing, maybe we can help out. So, yeah. Okay. So let's talk a couple cards about 211. So for those of you that don't know, 211 is a free and confidential service that basically connects Hoosiers with resources that are in their area. So this includes e-assistance. During 211, or during a call to 211, they can actually now fill out an application. They will still need to submit some documentation, but they can do the majority of the application over the phone with a 211 navigator. This has been expanded this year, I believe, and so we've seen a lot of success with this. And so sending your clients to 211 is a great way to get them started, especially those who may be technologically struggling. So just some do's and don'ts. So 211 does not have access to completed applications or their status once it's been submitted. So all of those questions need to be directed to a local service provider. So 211 does not process applications either. They can only submit them to the appropriate local service provider. So if you're on the phone with one of your customers or one of your clients and they have questions about what the status of their application is, or maybe they haven't heard anything yet, chances are they might be missing some information on it. So sending them to 211 again isn't going to really accomplish anything, and it can be really frustrating for somebody that is really struggling to reach dead ends over and over again. And so I would say coach your customer service people on sending people to their appropriate local service provider if they've already sent an application in. So again, these are some of the questions we have. Oh, shut the lights off on myself here. What ideas do you all have? What partnerships are you working on that we can share, and where can we assist? So as the next year goes by, we want to learn more about these, and we want to help wherever we can. So another little tip we have, putting EAP information on your website is a great idea. It's a great way to get assistance to your specific customers. We only ask that you verify that it contains up-to-date and accurate information. So we've actually been going through and reviewing our vendor partner websites for accuracy. And, you know, you may be hearing from us if there's some misinformation on there. So, but that's a great lift for your clients. Another thing, we're updating all of our marketing and graphics for you. So these will all be on our partner page when it's done. And you'll be able to, this will be official. So you could hand these out. You can do whatever you want with these. So we got some contact protocols. So in order to reduce confusion and streamline communication, please make sure you're communicating with the appropriate entity. So no vendor representative should ever provide IHCDA contact information directly to customers, whether they're EAP recipients or not. So that could mean the EAP mailbox, like the LIHEAP email, the vendor email, or Tom's email. Please coach your customer service people to get them to the LSP or get them to 211 to fill out an application. So that would be the appropriate route. If there are major issues, that LSP will lift that information to us, as well as you could lift that information to us if there are major issues. So we put in a handy little who to contact here. I'm not going to go over every little bit of this, but it'll be here for your reference. So as I said earlier, we do have a new email here. It's vendors@ihcda.in.gov, and it's dedicated for you to triage issues. Just a quick note, the fiscal department is separate from EAP and does not have access to this mailbox. And you still might hear from the actual LIHEAP inbox as well. So either of those is appropriate, but if you reach out to the vendor's mailbox, we'll be able to triage right away. So I know I went over a lot here, so we got some questions in the chat. So, well, Patty says we work with our township trustee, our ministerial association, and Salvation Army. That is great. Those are great partnerships. Thank you. Lynn asks, can we inform someone of what is missing from their packet if they tell us they applied and we pull the account on the portal and see what they are missing, as in social, from their children, etc.? That's a great question. Jolie, would you like to chime in on this?
Yeah, so the vendor portal doesn't have a ton of capability when it comes to what documents are missing for applicants. We know most frequently when people have applied, they are missing documents, but I don't know if you all can see what is missing. And just because of private information, I'm not sure how much in a vendor portal will ever be shared about that, which is one of the reasons why we asked them to, you all to send them to the LSP, because they can give in very detailed exactly what's missing, what they need, ways to upload those documents, and help triage from there.
Yep. Thank you, Jolie. So yeah, that definitely bears reminders. Like the LSPs have the answers. Let's see, Jonathan Lane.
Yes. So for clarification, if a individual reaches out to an LSP and they're submitted an application, that constitutes a 14-day hold to process that application, correct? Before we would be able to disconnect them.
Right. Yes.
Okay. Now, with that being said, if they call 211 and they're working an application, standing there, like if we're ready to disconnect them and they call 211 and start an application via the phone, does that also automatically constitute a 14-day hold?
Yes, it does.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah. That is them actually submitting the application. So absolutely. Great questions. Thank you so much. Okay. So we got just a couple more things here. So we're going to wrap this up. Yeah. So, we want to take a second and thank you for making another successful year. If you have questions or concerns, we're always available at vendors@iuca.in.gov. I put a link to our ePartner resource page, as well as a link to the vendor portal link. And again, we'll be sending all these recordings out, but definitely want to take a second and, thank you for everything that you've done, because these are your clients and these are your customers, and, they're the ones that are struggling. And so having access to this program gives them a leg up. So, what you guys are doing, I know it's extra work. I know it's hard to keep it all in line. I know it's balancing relationships with LSPs. You guys do great, and we thank you for it. So lastly, one of the programs that we're working on is updating our data systems. And so if you use the vendor portal, or you may be interested in using the vendor portal, we'd like some feedback. Now, on this next slide, we have a survey. And all it does, you just hold your phone up to it, click the link, takes about 15 minutes. And this is going to give us some real feedback on your usage or non-usage of our vendor portal. And, we'd really like that feedback so that we can build this out and get you better resources, better functionality, all of that. So, but thank you all for attending. Really appreciate your time. Looking forward to another year. Please let us know if anything comes up. Happy to have a chat. Everybody have a great day. Go ahead and stop recording.